Susan, welcome to the Elevating Resilience podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited. Well, first of all, I'm going to talk about our connection and how deep it is for me, and just sitting across from you is so amazing to me. Last year, I met you at the event at, I think it was...
It was the
wellness event,
Yeah.
at Brookdale.
Yeah.
And we met, my cousin introduced us, and right away I was like, let's connect. And you didn't know who I was. I told you a little bit of my story, and you were like, hey, can you come and talk about how important trusted adults were for you? And I was like, absolutely. And that was my first gig in speaking, and I stood alongside of you. I watched you in awe speak about such a tough topic. And then I got up there and spoke, and you said to me, like, you're good at that. And that was something that stuck with me, and why I pivoted so much in my life. And then through the grace of God, I found Lead You, and then was like, hey, SPTS, hey, Susan, hey, how does this all work? And, I found you again, and you've been inspiring me ever since. And I owe a lot of that to you. But more importantly, I want to share with my audience about, how you got into this field of nursing and then psychiatry, and then what you're doing now, and just the wisdom you share with me. When we get to talk, I want to share with my audience, because you have so much amazing things to say and share. So,
well, before I get into me, I do have to say that I do remember that day. And when you spoke, I knew you were a natural, and you had such a story to tell. And I was so graced by your presence that day, and I knew that you were going to go far with that story, because so many athletes need to hear it. But and I'm privileged to be here with you as well.
You made me cry. Thank you. It's nuts how everybody needs that person. The energy matches.
It did. It did. It still does.
All right. So now I want to just hear about you.
Well, it's been a journey. I've been in nursing, believe it or not, over 40 years now. And, as a nurse, every nurse has to go into medicine. You can't choose psychiatry. You have to do you can, but you shouldn't. Everybody says go into medicine. My first job was terminal oncology.
Wow.
I know. I was very, very super young. I went into nursing right out of high school. I became a licensed practical nurse, and I went on for other higher degrees in nursing. But my early job was terminal oncology. So my job as a nurse, I saw my role was helping people die with grace and dignity. And how I got into psychiatry, I always tell this story. One night, I was with a patient in the middle of the night, and trying to help them let go. And that survival instinct was so strong. These people were so sick. That it was really hard for them to let go. And I saw the survival instinct in the raw, and it fascinated me. And one night my nursing supervisor came down, and she called me to the door. I thought I was in trouble.
Yeah.
She goes, do you notice anything? And I'm like, all my procedures are done. She goes, where are the other nurses? I said, I don't know. I'm here trying to help this person. They're trying to let go. I'm trying to help them die with grace. And she said, well, I know where they are. They're at the nurses' station. But every time I come by here, you're at the bedside. I want to say to you, I think you may have missed your calling. Why don't you consider psychiatry? And so I took her seriously, and because I did like talking, and I knew that other nurses were up at the nurses' station, and I went into psychiatry. And then when I saw kids wanting to end their lives, I knew that went against that survival instinct that I had seen so raw. And I really got intrigued.
Yeah.
I said, this is not who we are. There's something off here. And my career became very focused on suicide prevention, particularly with the youth. But I've had a very, very wide range in mental health. I've worked in a lot with adults. I've worked with elderly, I've worked with kids. But I kept going back to the kids and saying, we can do better.
Yeah.
We can do better.
And tell me a little bit about the Manasquan situation, how involved you were with that.
Yeah. So, you talk about energy in the universe and how you end up in places, right? So one day I was actually teaching at the University of Medicine and Dentistry up here in Piscataway, and the commute from Piscataway to Manasquan was pretty significant. And I saw a terrible car accident on the way home to pick my kids up in Manasquan. And I thought, how many times am I going to drive this drive before it's me? Because I always seem to see a car accident. Walked into my child's school, and they said, oh, are you here for the school nurse position? And I said, what school nurse position? Maybe I am. And fast forward, I got the job.
Wow.
And really thinking that I was leaving psychiatry. I actually went on and got certified as a school nurse. But when I was at Monmouth University, I was talking to one of the deans there, and I said, do you think I'm going to be good at school nursing? Because I'm really psych. And she said, Susan, there's so much psych in school nursing. It's more than medicine. Well, little did I know, within 3 months of arriving, one of our students died by overdose, which really set the school into a great amount of despair. And then we entered, 3 months later, we lost a student to suicide by train, and that just spewed into a contagion over the next 4 years, where we were really losing kids on a very regular basis. We lost 12 students between the years of 2008 and 2012. And I realized, as I would call the Center for Disease Control as to how do you manage a contagion, they didn't know.
Yeah.
And so we were really recognizing that we were writing the script as we were going along.
Yeah.
And that was really eye-opening. A lot of lessons learned.
Yeah.
A lot of lessons learned.
And the community really came together, right?
It really did come together. And, initially I think people didn't. People were like, this is going to go away.
Yeah.
We live in a beautiful community by the seashore. It's like I always say there are no dandelions in the lawn. There may be some dandelions inside the house, but not in the lawn. It looks beautiful, right? But what was going on here? What was happening? And so I think people were in denial in the beginning, but quickly around after the third or fourth death, I think people said, well, what are we going to do? And we really started sitting together as a community, police, parents, the school, the clergy, anyone that wanted to help, sat around a table, even New Jersey Transit.
Wow.
And said, how can we stop this? And we began to really develop a model called the competent community model. And that's a model now throughout the country that we know that really builds resilience in communities. And interestingly enough, when Storm Sandy hit, we were in place to really launch a resilient community. And Governor Christie actually acknowledged Manasquan as one of the most resilient communities to recover after Storm Sandy.
Wow.
And that was because we were already in place.
Yeah.
And then we got hit again by the opioid epidemic, and we came together again. So there's a lot of resilience in community.
Definitely. And then that led you to SPTS, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, SPTS really helped our community.
Okay.
They came in around that third or fourth death and said, we think we can help you.
Okay.
And what it was, how they helped us was they had a curriculum, and they to bring into the school for our students. But they also did training with our counselors, how to manage what you do in the aftermath of any crisis. And they also had training for our counselors, and they talked about the community. But once we got that curriculum into the school and the kids, we really started talking to the kids. That's when we began to climb out of the contagion. It was the kids helping each other. And us listening to what they really needed that started to make the difference.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because when we've done the symposiums with the Be Swell, right? And you have that session where you have the four students, and then they ask the questions, and you see people just lighten up and open, and in such a tough subject. I'm like, wow, they're listening to their peers, which is making them so much more comfortable. I'm always amazed by it. It's so powerful, the voice, student voice.
The student, if you give them permission and really open up that conversation in a very authentic way, and tell them, you're not going to give them advice. You're not going to judge what they have to say, but you're really interested in having that open and honest conversation, they will open up. And that is when, those are the lessons that I still carry with me to this day, and I talk about it all the time. That's what we're not doing for our kids. A lot of the times we're not really listening. We're talking, but we're not really listening. They don't have a format. So when you give them that format, you get a lot.
And what would you say is the first thing? You have to listen, right? We talk at them. They need to listen. But what's the third piece of it that we have to do?
Well, you can't judge.
No.
You
No,
cannot judge.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't give advice. They don't want advice. They want to be heard, and they don't want your advice. And and if they're telling you something that you're worried about, you have to take action. You have to partner with them. You have to help them problem solve.
Yeah.
You stand next to them. They have the strength to do the problem solving. You want to empower them. You can do this, but I'm right here. You're not alone.
Yeah.
Because that's how kids feel, alone. And they feel hopeless.
Yeah.
So you lend them your hope. You stand next to them. You partner with them. You can say little simple words like we, us, put our heads together. Let's work on this together. You don't leave them, but somehow when you do leave them, they say, look what I did. And you start to build resilience right in those moments.
Yeah. That was the most amazing thing I learned, was that third part of the no judgment and not giving advice.
Yeah.
Because you want to be a babble mouth and be like, oh, this, and this. They don't care in those moments. They want to be just heard, and then they want to be empowered.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they want to know they're resilient.
And when you start giving advice, you're just like every other adult.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
And then when we start minimizing what they're going through, like, oh, you're just normal teenage angst, and you'll get through this, and if there's a breakup, which devastates the kids, there's so many fish in the sea. We use these silly cliches, and immediately they're like, here we go. This is the same adult I talked to an hour ago. They were not listening.
Yeah. I find too, connection is important. If you're already if you have an environment where you can connect in, like with the athletes, as a coach, or, as the trainer, or the fitness coach, whatever it is, you're coming in and you have this connection with them. But if you have no connection, they're not going to trust you. And there has to be that. And you have to see that you care first and that you respect them, where I think us adults want that first. And it's not the generation anymore.
No.
The generation, I hate to say it, they're a why generation, and you got to answer their question why, and you also have to show them their respect. It's not about you anymore.
It's about authenticity. When I first went into a high school, I was older, and I was like, maybe you have to be young to connect to these kids. No, you don't. All you have to do is be authentic, that you care, and that you're interested in them, and that you respect them.
Yeah.
And once they start to see that, they start to trust. But that takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
It takes a relationship. You just got to keep showing up in the same way, asking, tell me about yourself. I'm curious. Be curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not a mental health professional, like a teacher or even like a coach, I'd love for you to give some advice on how to have that connection with the boundary and what it looks like.
Yeah. So I think the main thing is to, like I said, find out about that child. You don't have to go deep, but tell me about you. Who are you? What makes you different than any other team member? What do you like? How many siblings do you have? Just start being interested in kids and into them personally. And they love to talk about themselves. So I think that true interest about who are you, and I want to know more. And the more you want to know, the more they're going to tell you. Yeah. And then before you know it, they're probably telling you more than you want to know.
And that's when the next person comes in.
But the truth is that kids they want to feel connected, and they want to feel like they're being seen. Yeah. That you recognize who they are, and if they are trying to be different. I always would say, if a kid dyed their hair purple or orange, why are they doing that? Are they doing that? And so I would ask them, oh my gosh, I love your purple hair. What happened? And sometimes you'll get the answer, yeah, I was having a really good time. You should see my friend. She's got orange. The other one's got green. We had a great night last night. And sometimes I get the answer, don't worry about it. And I would always respond with, no, well, I am going to worry a little bit about it. Are you okay? Are you okay? So the fact that they dyed their hair purple is not the thing, but why did they dye their hair purple? Are they looking for connection? And so if you see a kid, you ask, how you doing? And then you come back to it and say, the hair is still purple and I love it. Yeah. And you're looking for that relationship, and then eventually they see you're serious.
Yeah. It's just so important. I mean, even like when I spoke alongside of you and I was able to talk to those coaches, just coming from my perspective of needing that trusted adult and what that does. And even in homes that have two functional parents that have the outside world, still need the trusted adult, because you don't know how engaged those parents are. I was having a conversation today. I was asking this mom and this psychiatrist if my 2-year-old nephew was watching too much TV on his phone. And the woman had a great point for me. She said, don't worry about that as much as how engaged you are with your child when you're around them. And that's what they're seeing, that's like become a bigger problem than this screen time of more of, are you on your phone when you're hanging out with your kids? Because that's the connection they're craving. So it's our job to do that. We're blaming these kids for their connection, and it's us. So I found that so interesting.
If you ask a kid, who they want to, if they had the choice in the world, who they wanted to have dinner with, you think they might say a celebrity or a sports star or something. Most kids will say my parents. Most kids will say my mom, my dad, or both, or my siblings. A family. As a matter of fact, there was a thing like that where they asked kids that question, and they kept saying my family. So kids are always looking for that connection. The best day a kid has usually is when they spend it with their parents. So you can take them to the zoo, but they love the panda bear, but they loved you more. So I think that's so powerful, and I think we forget that. That's what they're looking for, that connection. The thing about trusted adults and parents that I want to bring up, though, a lot of times kids won't go to their parents to tell them about their pain, because not that they don't love them, but that they adore them. And when they see their pain reflected on their parents' face, it's almost too much. So it's easier to go to a trusted adult who isn't reflecting that pain right back at them. And it's easier to talk to them, and they don't feel like they're hurting their parents. So as a parent, don't be upset if your child, you should ask your child, if it wasn't me you talked to about anything, who would it be? So that they know that A, they have permission, and B, who would it be? Like, let me think, maybe it's grandma, maybe it's cousin, maybe it's a coach.
I love that, because like you hear kids say, like, I don't want to burden my parents. They have so many other things going on in their lives. Like, so I don't want them to know what's going on. And then they put the pressure on themselves, and then it just becomes a snowball. Like you definitely see that. So that's where there could be, that's why programming is so important for these kids to learn the skills outside of the home as well.
Because you don't know what's going on. Sometimes there's a squeaky wheel in the family that's getting a lot of attention or needs a lot of attention. And so the quiet ones are the ones that are just kind of holding up, but they really need the attention too. So that's when they give them that other outlet. So
you do so many things through SPTS.
We do.
Your plate's pretty full.
What
is what part brings you the most passion?
Oh, always the kids. Always the kids. 100%. We do our Be Swell group where we actually meet with kids and we teach them about wellness, mental health wellness, in terms of that it's, what does it mean to be well? And it's not just mental health. It's social health, it's financial health, it's occupational health, it's all the components that go into life, and helping them see that, we all have places to grow, and they're so young that, but helping them see life from a more holistic way, because kids are hard on themselves. But I always love the kids. And the youth and the students, because I learn from them. I always learn from them, and what they've taught me recently is that we are ready for this conversation about our mental health, because they know that their friends are in trouble. They know that their generation is in trouble. But every time we go to an adult, the adult isn't ready because of stigma and shame. And I believe in this next generation. I know in my heart that they're going to be the generation that's going to make the difference in stigma and shame, because they are ready to talk about it.
I definitely agree.
You see that?
Yeah. I see it because somebody said to me, a superintendent in a district said to me when I contacted them, they said, this is a grassroots problem. And I said, okay. So I said, grass grows on the ground. my ambassador program. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get all the way up to you. I'm going to have a kid knock on your door and be like, hey, why aren't we doing this? So I started the ambassador program. Now I got 75 of them. And now the schools are like, oh, yeah, Beth came over, knocked on my door, and now she wants to do this program because she says it's important. Now they need to listen because you did. Like when I was offended that they said that, they fired me up a little bit, but then I was like, maybe they are a little bit right. Maybe the problems are so big at the top in these school districts that if you do get the kid engaged and bought in, because when I talk to kids, and I'm sure you see this too, I have a much more enjoyable time talking to kids about mental health and mental wellness. We bounce things off of each other, but sometimes when I go talk to a coach, they're like, this is like way above my pay grade, and like when you say the word mental health, it really makes people feel uncomfortable. And I'll be like, hold on, do you guys feel uncomfortable with mental health? They're like, no, we all have it. And I'm like,
well, that is exactly what I find.
Yes,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. The same thing.
Yeah.
And the kids empower each other to talk more and more about it. And then they start to get that energy and that grassroots really starts to rise up. And then they're like, okay, let's go with this. And then they get to the adults, and oftentimes the adults are like, oh, this is too much. Or they get uncomfortable. And they get worried, and they don't want to say the wrong thing, so they say nothing.
Yeah.
And that is when the kids get frustrated.
And that, like, the part about funding, in something so important, which I don't understand financials. I'm not meant to be on this earth to do that. But to see all of the issues that are going on in this world, and at the very base of it are these kids, like coping skills and mental health. Like, how is that not a priority with funding? How?
Well,
can you explain that to me?
Well, I will tell you that, my journey in mental health has been a long, long time.
Yes.
Believe it or not, what's happening now, we are getting funding more than I've ever seen before.
Oh, okay.
And so that is what makes me the most optimistic. And that is the silver lining of the pandemic. Because, and a lot of people say the pandemic created mental health problems. No. It was there way before the pandemic. But what the pandemic did was highlight it. And people themselves, the adults, started to feel not well mentally. Yeah. And then the kids were saying they weren't. And then all of a sudden people started to understand it. And then legislature started to say we do need to do some funding. So we've actually gotten some decent funding, some funding in schools and some grant funding. And that's what makes me the most optimistic because that's what's been sorely lacking.
Yes.
I mean, mental health is a stepchild. It's a stepchild. And
is.
So it doesn't have enough. But if we can continue to keep our eye and grow these programs that everything that this funding has provided, if it can be sustainable, meaning that don't do a one and done, put in a program like that's going to stick for years and years to come, and then we can feed it a little bit of money each year, and it doesn't take all the money all the time. I think that we have much more, I'm much more optimistic.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
Yeah.
Like, I talk about that, like, what's next for me, and it's like, I'm not really wired to just go into a school and do a 45-minute talk and be like, see you later. Hey, that short lady with the all-in hat, like, came here and inspired me, and then I'm going to go home and then not remember. Yeah. So there's, like, I really, like, want to figure out, like, where is the follow-through like that? It needs to be a 3-part series. It cannot just be, like, don't pay me to just be your keynote speaker.
Right.
Like, then you're not putting your funds in the right place. Because it should be a program. Like, it should be more than that. And I feel strongly about that. Like, I feel like I'm stealing money. And I'm not stealing money because I have something great to say, but everybody has something great to say in some ways. So let's apply it.
I so hear you.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I so hear you.
And I'm like stuck because the programming part makes my little brain hurt a little, but I'm like, I'm going to figure it out as slowly as it takes me. Like, that is really, like, what I feel makes the biggest difference.
I call them one and dones.
Yes.
One and dones. And that is one of the things that SBTS won't do. Yeah. We, when we go into a school, we're going in with a comprehensive program. We're going to teach for long periods of time. Sometimes our trainings are full day for 3 or 4 days over a year span. We never really leave the school. We're always there looking to refresh and those kinds of things. It has to be sustainable. It has to become part of the culture of the school.
Yes.
And that's what really changed Manasquan. when it became everybody's responsibility to have their eyes on the kids, whether it be the maintenance staff, to the cafeteria staff, to the teachers, to the superintendent, to the bus drivers, to the parents, everybody participating in that. There was a paradigm shift in thinking that it's no longer your responsibility, it's our responsibility. And when those programs get into place, that's when you see change.
Yeah.
Sustainability is the key. Yeah, no more one and dones.
No.
They don't work.
There has to be, it's culture. How would you define culture?
How would I define culture?
What would you say it is?
I think it's a collective.
Okay.
It's a collective learning. And when I go into other people's cultures that I don't know about, I go in with humility and curiosity, and I ask permission to be there and to learn. And I think that's when culture changes, and that's when cultures embrace each other. I've worked with indigenous populations, and you have to walk in very slowly because there's been history of trauma, and they don't necessarily trust. So you have to really understand that history and try very, very respectfully to change if you want to make change, and ask permission and have input. And that's what changed in Manasquan, when we took input from the culture of the kids. And the teachers and the community, and said, what do we need to do differently, and do it together.
Just gonna say that to you because I have this, I feel like when you go into a school, you can kind of feel it. You feel it right away. I mean, you've been doing it for so long. I'm sure you feel it right away. What the culture is, you could tell by attitudes, you could tell by body language, you could tell by a lot how much they want to learn. The teachers in the back that are on their laptops, and you're like, hey, I know you don't want to be here, but you should.
Right.
And so I really one thing I want to do is have this culture strategy of how are you defining that mental health culture in your school? How is everybody looking at it, and how can we change the attitude? And for me, it's the culture within the teams.
Yeah.
Are we listening to, does a kid know why they come off of the field, and do we know how that makes them feel if they're not talked to? Because when that can snap a kid. If I'm not talked to, then why do I want to be here? And if I don't want to be here, then this isn't a strategy for me. And now this is a bad experience in my life. So if I can't use athletics, then I might go use drugs, or I might not feel valued. So to me, it's seeing where the coach feels the culture is, the kid, and then coming up with a way to be okay, this is what it looks like. So how can we fix it now?
Exactly.
I feel that's another direction where I'm could be so powerful but you have to be willing.
You have to be
No one
willing.
wants to look at that, really. That's a little hard.
It is hard. And, it comes down to respect. If you respect your kids on the team, or your team, and the coach respects the team, and the team then respects the coach, then you expect honesty. And you can say to that athlete that came off the field, this is why I brought you off the field. You don't seem to be, able to focus right now, but, take a little breath, and, we'll talk about it even more, but you just don't take them off without an explanation, to allow them the respect of, today is not your best day. That doesn't mean you're not going to have another day, but I owe you an explanation. If I pulled you suddenly, I want to let you know why. And I also want to be open to the dialogue. And that's when that mutual respect really creates culture. And so the culture of open dialogue on a field, not just that the coach says it with no explanation, kids feel lousy, but they might have a right to ask the coach later on why. And there's that open conversation.
And then that's the skill you teach the athlete to advocate.
And that's resilience.
That's resilience.
Because when you really talk about resilience, what is resilience? It's the ability to problem solve. So if I don't have the ability to ask my coach what happened, I don't have the ability to solve the problem. And so that, or if I don't feel like I have the strength to talk to an adult, how am I going to solve other problems down the road? So you're empowering kids a little bit at a time. With what they can manage. And eventually they start to feel like I have the strength to talk to a coach. Some kids, if a coach asks them what they think, they're afraid to say it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're afraid
100%.
to say it.
Well, then you throw in the wrench of a parent, and then you throw in the wrench of parent pressure and athletics. And what athletics has done and what it's become, right? And so like that's one of where All In actually came from. It's like the athlete and the coach and parent at the end of this triangle. And if we're not all together, then we're not benefiting the kids' mental health the best way possible on the field, which will then in turn affect their physical performance. So, but do you know, if I had a triangle right now, do you know how hard it is to connect all three?
Yeah.
Because the coach doesn't want to deal with the parent because the parent is putting this pressure on playing time and all of that. But I feel this way, and everyone can think I'm crazy and I'm okay. But if there was communication and open dialogue amongst all three, and we put our egos aside, and our coaches said, it doesn't matter how much money I make, I'm here for kids. I am taking this parent's child in my hands after school and spending probably more time with them than this parent. And I entrust that the parent was trusting me. Like so I'm going to take, and I'm going to talk to the parent. And it might not be about playing time, but this parent's going to know that Johnny was really off at practice today, and I want to know if anything's going on at home. And then both the parent and the coach can talk to Johnny and be like, what do we have going on here? Right. But instead I'm not talking to that parent. She wanted to know why Johnny wasn't playing.
Right.
And there's these barriers that are affecting the kids. 100%, Susan.
I see it all the time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say to you is like, what is the best way to say it, how powerful it is? Because then when it gets to you, now you're at suicide prevention, and now it's, I didn't see it was going to happen. To advocate.
And that's resilience.
That's resilience.
Because when you really talk about resilience, what is resilience? It's the ability to problem solve. So if I don't have the ability to ask my coach what happened, I don't have the ability to solve the problem. And so that, or if I don't feel like I have the strength to talk to an adult, how am I going to solve other problems down the road? So you're empowering kids a little bit at a time with what they can manage. And eventually they start to feel like I have the strength to talk to a coach. Some kids, if a coach asks them what they think, they're afraid to say it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're afraid
100%.
to say it.
Well, then you throw in the wrench of a parent, and then you throw in the wrench of parent pressure and athletics. And what athletics has done and what it's become, right? And so like that's one of where All In actually came from. It's like the athlete and the coach and parent at the end of this triangle. And if we're not all together, then we're not benefiting the kids' mental health the best way possible on the field, which will then in turn affect their physical performance. So, but do you know, if I had a triangle right now, do you know how hard it is to connect all three?
Yeah.
Because the coach doesn't want to deal with the parent because the parent is putting this pressure on playing time and all of that. But I feel this way, and everyone can think I'm crazy and I'm okay. But if there was communication and open dialogue amongst all three, and we put our egos aside, and our coaches said, it doesn't matter how much money I make, I'm here for kids. I am taking this parent's child in my hands after school and spending probably more time with them than this parent. And I entrust that the parent was trusting me. Like so I'm going to take, and I'm going to talk to the parent. And it might not be about playing time, but this parent's going to know that Johnny was really off at practice today, and I want to know if anything's going on at home. And then both the parent and the coach can talk to Johnny and be like, what do we have going on here? Right. But instead I'm not talking to that parent. She wanted to know why Johnny wasn't playing.
Right.
And there's these barriers that are affecting the kids. 100%, Susan.
I see it all the time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say to you is like, what is the best way to say it, how powerful it is? Because then when it gets to you, now you're at suicide prevention, and now it's, I didn't see it was going to happen.
What I do, and I see it all the time, is, whether I believe it or not, I say to the parent, I know you have your child's best interest in mind. I know that about you. You need to know that about me. I also have your child's best interest in mind. So we're actually on the same page. And can you imagine if we had the ability to work together and communicate effectively, we could really move your child to the next place in life that they need to be. But if we don't believe that we both have each other's, that child's best interest in mind, we're going to have conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So that, in an emergency room, when a child is in crisis, sometimes they come in and they're angry at the hospital before they even get there, or they're angry at the school, and you have to kind of level the playing field, so to speak, and just say, you know what, I need you to understand, this is my work, and I really care about your daughter or son right now, I want you to know that, and I know you do too. So let's both take a breath and figure out a way to get the best care for your child. It's the same thing on the field. Yeah. What's the best result, and what's the lesson you really want that child to know? 100%. I mean, when you speak to, really, and you speak all the time to athletes, they'll tell you that the lessons of life are taught on the field. Yeah. So much of it, right? And that's one of the things that I say, that if we can get those parents to start to work with us, not against us, we've made huge progress. Yeah. And that child will grow.
Yes.
No matter where they are, whether it's a hospital setting, school setting, or on the field.
It's all the same. And it doesn't come down to money and that this is not my pay grade and I'm only coaching because of this. Then you shouldn't be coaching. And then the problem lies, and talking to my friends that are athletic directors, is, well, we can't get coaches. And I'm like, that's really sad. Like, that's, I mean, they can't get teachers either, and there's just this continuum. But at the end of the day, the kid is learning everything that they need for life in those environments. And it's powerful if we can, take one step at a time to fix it and to open up the dialogue. Like, we did a survey through All In, and it was like, what is the number one reason why you play sports? Not one athlete out of 300 athletes said winning. Not one athlete said anything about anything but relationships. My teammates, my team bonding. I love having a place to go at the end of my day. I love to be part of a team. Nothing had to do with it. So if we're putting so much emphasis on winning, and don't get me wrong, winning is important. I'm one of the biggest competitors in the world. It's not the only thing. You have to teach it the right way. And winning in life is way more important.
And I think that's a really great thing to even bring to the parents. What is your goal for your child on this team? Is it winning? Or is it personal growth, athletic growth? A lot of times they have their eye on a scholarship, those kinds of things. And, but how do you define winning? Yeah. Is good sport, point. I remember with my own child, he was a great athlete, but he had a temper, and I didn't like his sportsmanship. So we redefined winning. To me, if you could get through a game and not show your hot head, we were winning, right? Yeah. And I remember one game, I said to him, he had a terrible game. He didn't play well at all. And I said, good game. And he said, were you there? And I said, okay, it wasn't a good game. He said, but it was, because did you see me? I slapped everybody's hand as they came off the court. I stayed in the game. I never got discouraged. It was a good game. I won. And I was like, you're right. Yeah. You won.
Mom, you did it. That was good.
And that was huge. A real move. Yeah. A real movement in his thinking. And from that point on, I think he grew. Yeah. And that's really what you want out of it. That's really what you're looking for. What is winning? And
to celebrate that, and that's a culture. If your culture celebrates that, then it's going to happen more.
Yeah.
If your culture doesn't pay attention to those things, they don't use the words resilience, they don't have the kids self-reflect, they don't ask the tough questions, then they're not going to be willing to take that risk. And when they see their teammates doing it, it's huge. When I see these, especially male athletes, just be like, hey, Ange, I tried this at practice today, and I'm just like, well, what the guys think? And they were like, oh, they were so stoked. It was like, really, you guys had real conversations? And it's awesome. It's funny. I love obviously working with the women athletes, but the guys they're different because they want to kind of share. They do, and they feel comfortable sharing more if you have a woman there to facilitate the conversation,
Oh, that's, that brings me to an experience I had with an all-boys school locally, where I went in to speak, and I had a whole script that I was going to do, and then I looked around the room, and I thought, I have this literally room full of probably over 100 boys. Yeah. And I just said, guys, I'm not gonna talk about what I want to talk. I kind of want to talk about what you want to talk about. And they started talking, and they were talking about mental health. And that boys want to talk about the mental health. They just never have the opportunity, and they don't have a platform. But here I was, a woman, asking them, what do you want to talk about? Giving them permission. And even their advisor was like, I cannot believe what just happened in this room.
That's so cool.
The hands were coming up. They had so much to say. So I think we underestimate boys.
Yeah, we do.
And to be honest with you, if you want to talk about mental health and suicide, there are highest rates. In the contagion, they were 11 out of 12 were boys. And it's because we really foster that whole macho kind of thing that boys don't cry. And I know that sounds old-fashioned, but it's still there on some levels. And I think I always say to men, you got to be a role model to talk about your mental health, to talk about your emotions for these young men, because they feel it. They just need an avenue to talk about it.
Yeah, it's true.
Because you're building, good fathers, good husbands.
Yeah,
that's another part of it.
That's a whole nother part.
That's a whole nother
that's a whole nother
discussion.
podcast. It's funny. I use ChatGPT. I mean, come on, some of us do.
Yeah.
I need it, and then I have to tell it to talk like in my tone, and we have to bring it back a notch. But I will put something in, and it always says mental toughness. So finally, I got mad at Chatty. I call her Chatty. And I'm like, Chatty, it's not about mental toughness. Let me tell you what mental toughness is. So then I write in, and Chatty says, you are right. Mental toughness can be that as well. And most men think being mentally tough is hiding their feelings. And I was like, Chatty got it. I wish I took a picture of it. This is a true story. Because I was like, I like to follow some of these like social workers around the country, and they really talk about how detrimental it is to be like, all right, you have to be mentally tough. And being mentally tough is, sucking it up at all costs and all of that. And that's not what it is. Like, it's also knowing that you need help. But when you need help and you're courageous to ask for it, it's then getting back in the game to make the changes you need to make.
Yep.
And that's the difference. Like, to me, like, that's the true meaning of it, just from experience and seeing it. But yeah, it's they say that. So kids think, well, I have to be mentally tough. I have to get through this, even though
when the real bravery isn't asking for help. The real bravery and the real courage is in letting people know where you're at, that you need help, and getting and looking for resources to help you.
Yes.
That's bravery. That's mental toughness. Most people, I think the statistic is, walk around for over 10 years struggling with mental health issues, serious mental health issues, before letting anyone know where they're at. And that just sets them back years and years and years in their recovery.
Yeah.
And that's what we don't want to do with our youth. We want to, in SPTS, I talk about this a lot. We're so free to talk about our physical health.
Yes.
People will tell me all about their gastrointestinal issues. I'll be in the grocery store, and there's no boundaries, right? But if I ask them about their mental health, we're not talking about that. Or if I ask them about their children's mental health, we're not talking about that. We want our mental health to be as easy and comfortable to talk about as we talk about our physical health. And when we do that, we're giving the message that mental health is as important as our physical health. And we haven't quite given that message clearly.
No. Okay, so how would you when people think of mental health, they still think I have a mental illness. And one of the things I talk about in the TED Talk is I have a mental illness, but I have a positive mental health because I medicate and I use my strategies every single day to have a positive mental wellness. How would you describe it?
Well, I always talk about it from a place of health, because, you're always striving for optimal health. Even let's look at your physical health, right? You can have a cardiac condition. There are people that have all the risk factors for a heart attack, right? They're obese, they don't eat well, and they never have a heart attack.
Yeah.
And then there are those people that have all the protective factors. They're gym rats, and they have the massive heart attack.
Yeah.
But who's ever showing the warning signs of a heart attack in front of you, they're the ones having a heart attack. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So if they're having chest pain, shortness of breath, whether they're a gym rat or someone who's not, they're showing the warning signs of a heart attack. We have to do something now.
Yeah.
So I tell people, don't worry about mental illness, mental health. Look at warning signs. What's going on in front of you?
Yeah.
And then you'll know what to do, because you can move people up and down the trajectory of mental health.
Yeah.
sometimes we fall into bad problem solving, and sometimes we need to move back up. But what the warning signs are, when people are isolating, when they're not talking, when they're changing their basic habits, when they're not eating, when they're not sleeping, when they're not taking care of their hygiene. Those are the warning signs. And that's when we need to ask the questions. Hey, you know what? I got to be honest with you. You're not yourself.
Yeah.
What's going on? So I don't even worry. Like you could look like you're going to have a heart attack or look like you're never going to have a heart attack, but I can't tell that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're showing me these warning signs, then I can talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we miss it.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health doesn't have a face, and it doesn't have a behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Warning signs.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're at, because if we ignore those warning signs, we can sink into serious mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't ignore those warning signs, we can move right back to mental health.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of really looking at where those people are at, and it's across the age span. But I always say, what are they saying? What are they doing?
Yeah.
And ask the questions. Have things gotten so bad?
Mm-hmm. Why do people feel that having mental health issues, why do you feel like a failure? Why do people stigmatize it as I'm a failure? Like a mom doesn't want to talk about their kid's mental health, and you bring that up and they feel, well, what did I do wrong?
Right.
How do you...
Because this is stigma and shame attached to mental health and mental illness. We have been programmed that way for our families. What did your family tell you? Our cultures. What did our cultures tell us? What has been the stereotypes that we're challenged by? So stigma and shame come into that very, very much so. So it's seen as a weakness. Just suck it up. You can do better. When in fact, it really just takes a conversation, and sometimes just talking about it releases it, and you're back to yourself again. Do you ever have like just a really bad night, and you're upset with a friend or upset with a spouse, and you go out with your girlfriend and you talk it out, and you're okay?
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
back. You're back.
I mean, sometimes I need a glass of wine.
You might need a glass. Okay, right. And you might need a second night with your girlfriend, but you get it.
You're 100%
or your friend.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's sometimes just releasing that, and it's not a weakness.
No,
it's
not a weakness.
Human.
Yeah.
There are people that have chemical imbalances in the brain. Yeah. There's genetics that come into play for depression and anxiety. And if that's the case, there's lots of interventions and therapies that we can do to move people out of that spot.
Yeah.
All of it takes work. All of it takes work. But none of it can happen if you have too much shame that you'll never ask for help.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so that's the stigma. That's why we remove stigma, because stigma and thinking it's a weakness and it's your fault and all these things keeps people from asking for help.
Yeah.
That's what we want to change.
Yeah.
And then we'll worry about whether it's mental health or mental illness. Doesn't
Whatever
matter.
the words are.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Health is health.
Yeah.
Health is health. Physical health, mental health. Let's just get healthier.
Healthier. Oh, that was a good one. I'm gonna coin that one on a shirt. We have 3 minutes left, so now we're gonna have a little fun.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you some fun questions.
Oh, let's go.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite food?
Oh, pizza.
Oh, I love it. Where's your favorite pizza spot?
Squan Tavern.
Really?
Yeah, Squan.
Do you know that the Pisone family was related to my grandfather?
No way.
Yes, that is his cousin.
Oh my gosh, I love it there.
Yeah, it's
spot.
great. It's a good spot.
Good
love
spot.
That.
All these years.
And you lived in Manasquan, right? Your kids went to Manasquan.
Could walk to Squan Tavern. So
okay, there it is. You're right there.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you have a topping on your pizza?
Oh yeah. Well, I can really pretty much go. There's pretty much no pizza I don't like, except I'm not a fan of pineapple on a pizza or any of that. Yeah, but pretty much I can go anywhere else.
Sausage and peppers is
Sausage
my jam.
and peppers. I like peppers and onion. See, there we go.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. I love it.
Yeah.
Where is your favorite spot to vacation?
I would say, geez, that's so hard. I love the beach.
Okay.
So pretty much any beach. Okay. I've traveled a lot looking for the perfect beach, and believe it or not, I think I found it.
Don't say it's here.
It is here.
Is it?
It is here.
Did you go to Hawaii yet?
I've been to Hawaii.
Oh, man.
I've been up and down all around Europe. I've looked for the perfect beach. I've been to Florida.
Did you go to Aruba yet?
I have not, and
Okay.
that is on my bucket list.
All right, maybe we'll change your mind.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm hoping for.
I mean, I could do the beach in September here, but I don't know.
Aruba's the place to go?
I loved it. Yeah,
All right, I'm on
it
my
was
way.
amazing. I did. And I mean, Hawaii is the best to me.
Hawaii is pretty incredible.
It's very incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
cool. What is your favorite book you've ever read?
Oh, wow. There's so many. Oh, my gosh. I mean, I'm kind of with the classics. I love Gone with the Wind. It's still one of my favorites. But I do a lot of self-help books.
Okay.
I do, a lot of self-help books.
Who's somebody that you follow?
Marianne Williamson.
Okay.
I love a lot of her work. I look at what people say, and if it inspires me, I go that way.
Okay.
So yeah, your book was one of my favorite
Oh,
books.
come on.
No, seriously, it's
Yeah.
still I'm reading it right now. So I reread it.
Yeah.
I look for inspiration.
Okay.
Because I don't have that much time to read.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always reading kind of textbooks
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. So I look for something that spiritually moves me. I do a lot of spiritual reading.
Yeah. So do I. That's cool. I love
Jesus
that.
Calling is a book I read every
Every
morning.
day- every morning.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really cool. The one woman, I gotta get checked. One of my favorite ladies. She's a spiritual woman that writes. I'll tell you. I'll text you. Where did it go?
I know it happens to me all the time.
Oh my goodness.
It happens to me all the time.
All right, last two questions. I want to know, what is your one piece of advice for parents as far as having a kid that's struggling?
Don't blame yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Really, don't blame yourself. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
And just open your heart, your mind, and listen to what they're really going through, and connect to their pain, and hold space for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that will open up that whole relationship.
And last one, what would you tell your younger self? What would you tell younger Susan at
I would tell younger Susan that every obstacle you're about to hit in life has such powerful lessons. You just won't see it in the moment. But stay with it and always look for that lesson to be learned. And once you learn it, never forget it.
Let's go. I love you. That was 0. That was awesome.
Yeah.